Hello there and welcome to This Morning. I am Dapo Aruwajoye. It's very, very good to be back on the program after a refreshing vacation, and it's so wonderful to know you're still part of the program also. We want to say thank you very much. Normally we're talking about the power sector today, and we know the people have been assessing the first 100 days of President Muhammadu Buhari-led APC government at the center. Many will agree that there is significant improvement in electricity supply since the inauguration of the administration in May. And they attributed this to what they refer to as the president's body language. Power generation and distribution in the last 16 years in this country has been in comatose, even as governments during this period promised Nigerians uninterrupted electricity. Huge amount of money was spent towards the achievement of that objective, and that's without success. So of recent, a probe is being set up by the 8th Senate to investigate the awesome practices in the sector from 1999 to date. That's for 16 years. And you'll be shocked that there was a revelation that the federal government has spent a whooping sum of 2.7 trillion naira in that sector alone. And that's according to the permanent secretary of the ministry, talking about Mr. Ambassador God knows Ogali. He made the revelation during his presentation to the probe panel. So we're looking at that today. And the greatest challenge facing the sector, according to him, is not power generation, but power distribution. He explained again that most of the distribution facilities are obsolete and require huge sums to be changed by the distribution companies, commonly referred to as discos. So what about the alleged 2.7 million, 2.7 trillion, I said? That's a huge sum of money. What was it used for? And is there hope for an uninterrupted power supply to Nigerians who need it, and how soon? So that should be answering the question of our caller yesterday. I think it was Tony that was reporting that she, in her neighborhood, though people are saying they have light, but in her neighborhood, she's got problems with electricity, maybe a day on and a day off. So probably today we should be answering your questions, and maybe you call back to tell us if there's any improvement since yesterday. And to help us find answers to these questions and more, two gentlemen in the studio. I have Bala. Zaka is an energy expert, so I know he's capable enough to tell us what is going on in that sector. Good morning, Bala.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
And so applicable also, we have a lawmaker, because we should have an expert and a lawmaker here to help us discuss this issue also. I have Honorable Segun Olulade, is a ranking member of the Lagos State House of Assembly. Thank you very much for being part of the program also.
Thank you for having me.
Bala, 2.7 trillion naira, that's a huge sum, you must admit, really. And people want to know, is it too much or too little when we're talking about power generation in the last 16 years?
When you talk about investment, in power generation or energy generation, I can tell you that amount is not too small to invest in order to make sure you have power. Because everything about the development of a country is predicated on the availability of power or sufficient energy. And when you look at it everywhere, when you talk about science and technology, you cannot carry out research in institutions if you don't have adequate power. When you go to the hospitals, how can you carry out surgeries? How can you go around and check people if there is not enough electricity, right? When you even look at the problems we were having with refined petroleum products, at a point some of us said there are two key ministers or DGs that must cross-pollinate or cross-fertilize information every day. We said the minister for what? Power, and the minister for energy. In our own case, maybe the minister for petroleum or the DG for petroleum and the DG for what? For power. The reason is because if you have enough electricity, there will be glut at the filling station. And that simply means most of the diesel and petrol that we've been buying to run generators wouldn't have been necessary.
But like in this instance, in this picture now, do you want to say 2.7 trillion naira is justified because we have a marginal power generation increase of maybe of 2,000 how much do you think
the question is this:
is it justified?
The question you now ask now is the question of if the input, you know, or capital outlay for that investment is X. In this case, the trillions you're talking about, and the output we saw is a given differential of megawatt. Is it justified? Then that is a different question entirely. But the need for power is something that can never be overemphasized. But if you make the investment, and at the end of the day, what you are seeing is this infinitesimal, you know, people are still buying petrol at the filling station, buying diesel, you know, places are in darkness, then there is a need for what? For probe.
But I know there's a need for probe, but you still haven't answered my question, Bala.
Okay.
Is it justified 2.7 million naira for a mega amount of electricity?
Well, it depends. That's why I said if one is given the figure, you know, you can now say, if I invest, for instance, if I'm supposed to spend 20,000 naira, right, to come up with reasonably 5 tubers of yam, but I discovered I spent 100,000 naira and I just came up with 10 tubers of yam, then it's not justified.
In this instance, how much could 2.7 trillion naira would have given us in megawatts?
I cannot exactly say,
but you can assume, just guess.
Reasonably, I think Nigeria has always had problems in terms of the investment we made and the requisite output, whether output in terms of electricity generation, output in terms of petroleum refined products, output even in terms of the education we always expect or quality we expect to get out of institutions. So generally what I'm saying, in the past and even as we speak today, most of the investment that government has been doing, including even private investment, we have not been getting the dividend or commensurate output. So we
could have done better with 2.7 trillion naira invested in power. We could have done better, right?
By far. So the sentiment of probing is a positive sentiment.
Honorable Olulade, when you saw that panel yesterday, what came up to your mind? Do you think we're going to find the root cause of all these problems in the power sector? 2.7 trillion naira invested in 16 years. And we have maybe like 1,000 megawatts or thereabouts.
I think Nigerians should understand that over the years we have seen so many probes, and that have already culminated to the disposition of our people in the country. The last output that we could see, the last investment that everybody could point to in Nigeria as far as power generation and distribution is concerned, is in Shiroro in 1991. And if between 1999 and 2015, the PDP government have invested, they claim to have invested 2.7 trillion into the power sector. I think it's alarming, and it's very, very laughable comparing to what we are seeing with our power generation or the output that we are getting in this country today.
What do you think could have happened? What could have transpired?
That's the level of corruption that we are finding in our country. It's a monumental corruption that we find on ground. And I think there's nothing else. If the generator companies are making more money, and the power that we fetch that with that huge sum of money, today Nigeria should be talking in the tune of maybe 4,000 megawatts. But when we are now talking about less than 2,000 and all sorts, I think there is a problem somewhere. And you can see that immediately we have a man of integrity, a man that shows that corruption is stealing, stealing is corruption. With his body language, things started changing. Those who have done, they have done so many policies on bundling of the power sector that could have enhanced what we are seeing today. But all what we have been seeing, and because of the probing thing, that they know that once they probe, nothing will happen. And now that they are seeing that something is going to happen, if any probe is taking place, that somebody somewhere is going to follow up with a probe, you will see that everybody is sitting right, and that's sitting up, and that's why we're seeing the situation that we're seeing today in Nigeria. Okay. That you can see an improvement in the power generation. Okay,
you mentioned unbundling of the power sector, and you remember way back the power generation or the power distribution in this country has never been has always been in the hands of the government. And in 1999 or about, we talked about bringing this generation of power distribution to the hands of the private owners. And do you think there's a justification again? Because I've asked you the first justification, another justification again. Do you think the privatization of this sector, because that's part of what Honorable Igali or Ambassador Igali was saying yesterday, that has been the best thing that's ever happened to electricity supply in this country, the privatization of that sector. Do you think it was really justified?
You see, privatization is not a bad idea, right? Commercialization is not a bad idea. Deregulation is not a bad idea. But the first thing you need to do is to look at the value it will add to your aggregate economy, right? A lot of people started having a negative perception of Nigeria within the African continent when Nigeria claimed to be the biggest economy, right? But everything about the energy foundation or power foundation of Nigeria was resting on less than 5,000 megawatts. That was when it became clear that Nigeria was lying to itself. Because you cannot boast to be a continental economy. And everybody knows that in today's dynamism of events, whether it's in technology, whether it's in agri, whether it's in automobile, whether it's in medical sciences, you need to be driven by what? By power and energy. And Nigeria was operating on less than 5,000 megawatts. You know, that was when it became clear that probably the public side, you know, of management of power in Nigeria has failed. But that does not mean that collaboration is not necessary. Generally, when you want to infuse or you want to create what we call mobility within the economy, you have the role of the public sector, right? And you have the role of the private sector. By the time you bring them into congruency, that is when you truly generate movement within the aggregate economy. A greater part of jobs, right, is always created within the private sector. Because it is within the private sector you are going to have casuals, you have carpenters, you have Okada riders, right? Within the public sector, you just have a few people who even act in regulatory capacity. So, to answer your question directly, that intention to privatize was a good thing.
But,
and even the plan was even not only to privatize, but a partnership was going to continue.
Yes.
Right? With the government. It was a fantastic idea. But Nigeria has always been known, you know, to be a country where people can be lawless when it comes to national assets. Nigeria is a country where we know that a lot of the leaders have had bad lieutenants.
So the whole intention has been derailed, right?
Yes.
The whole intention of the privatization
was a good intention, yes. But because there were bad economic lieutenants, we had economic traitors and betrayers. It was looking as if the whole intention was ill-intended.
Okay. Okay, let me go to you, Honorable, because Nigerians will wonder, why is it that we went to the table, the government went to the table, we're talking about the privatization of this sector, all the monies were being taken out, because according to the panel probe, they said they have issues with these, even the figures that have been presented already, because we have the managing director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company was there, the permanent secretary of the power sector was there. We had a whole lot of people that spoke yesterday, and even at that year probe. But they said the committee is so concerned about discrepancies, contradiction in the presentations, and in most submissions, no project costs, but there are only budget allocations. Where has the National Assembly been all the while where they were giving these guys the money? And when they were spending it, there should be somebody to checkmate the spending.
Sincerely speaking, in this country, we still have a lot to do. And that is one thing that I'm always particular when people are trying to attack the legislative arms of government. We are like the police. And when the police is not well funded or enhanced or empowered, you end up having a lot of insecurity within the system. And the same applies to the legislative arm of government. When we see a legislative arm of government that could not stand on their own to look into the face of the executive to say, you have done this, and perform that very important role as known as oversight over some of these agencies of government or parastatals or MDAs, there will always be this kind of issues. Look, I am of the opinion that the legislative arm of government at the National Assembly should have done better, and we could have got. But at times when you even do all those, and that's why we Nigerians are fed up with the issue of probing. Yes. You said you want to probe, you want to probe. Nigerians are fed up. When they probe, we hear all the figure, and the next thing you see is those men that are alleged to be a culprit are also flying around the world. They are enjoying the best comfort in the land, and they become untouchable. Those are the issues. Because we will remember Honorable Ndidi Elumelu. He's saying he's ready if they need to call him for interview at this pro, because you remember he was there at this he headed the pro panel of the, I think it was the 7th Assembly or the 6th Assembly. I think it was the 7th Assembly. He headed the panel then. Yeah. But eventually he got his white linen stained with oil at the end of it, with palm oil in this instance at the end of the day, because it was dragged into the old poto, you know what I mean? Yeah. Let me clear that to you. And people were saying it was because the revelation that happened then was because there were there were characters in this country that they were fingered. Principal characters, big people. They were fingered in the I don't know, in the whole sham. Look, we have serious problem. We are in serious mess. We thank God that APC came into office. If not, I don't know where we would have been today. Look, if you even there's this common saying now on the streets that if you fight corruption, corruption is going to fight you back. So we have some cabal in the system. So those cabal and what Elumelu and co was trying to do then, even if they finish the report, who is going to execute it? That's the problem. It was a $16 billion power scam then. And again, there was allegation that Elumelu collected 100 million, though a court has absolved him of that of recent. But but that thing would not go away easily. Look, and that's what we are talking about, and that's why we need the support of the public to always support the legislature. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's support them at times so that they can do their job. The moment those cabal realize that you are going after them and you are going to expose them, you are going to have problem. Thank God we have the likes of General Buhari today as our president, who in every way Nigerians are comfortable with in terms of anti-corruption stand. And with that...
So you think that this is not going to be like another deja vu?
It's
not going to be like the same, playing to the Galleria and at the end of the day, we just wave it.
And that is where the fear lies. And that's why people are panicking. And that is why you are going to see a lot of people who will also come out to fight this same probe.
Bala, if you get what I mean, it's not going to be the same old let's just play to the Galleria.
It purely depends. It purely depends. And with due respect to you, Honorable, your team or that your arm, you know, when you talk about
the legislative arm.
Legislative arm, you have executive, right, and you have the judiciary. That your arm has demonstrated legislative lawlessness. That your arm has also demonstrated legislative inefficiency and moral inefficiency, and that was where you lost the respect.
Can they gain that back now?
You can always gain that back, because the system has a way of cleansing itself. Because all these things we're talking about, Dapo, we're just talking about two sources that will make us have enough power. It's either the hydro system or the gas system. And these things are very simple and straight. For the dams and the hydro system, you know it has something to do with seasons, right? During rainy seasons, yeah, you expect the Kainji Dam, the Shiroro Dam to be at what? At their best. So what you just need to check is, during that time, do we have people either by virtue of professional inefficiency or moral inefficiency or economic sabotage who will now make that aspect not to come up? In terms of the gas distribution, is the same thing.
Can I ask a question? Are you supporting the notion of the Director General of the National Power Training Institute of Nigeria, that's NAPTIN, and the MD of Ikeja Electricity? I read it somewhere where they were saying this old way of generating light, talking about the water and the gas, is the only way to generate now, that Nigeria does not have a choice. When we're talking about renewable energy, we should be tapping into renewable energy.
Let me answer that question directly. You see, that is where we make the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake. You are talking about renewables, right? And biomass. There's nothing wrong about it. But what you have, you cannot even bring out the best out of it. People are talking about nuclear energy generation. Let me just tell you very simple. When you go to the gas aspect, you are more of a gas nation than an oil nation. The gas is there on the ground. If you are able to get this gas and would appropriate gas pricing, with your implementation of the gas master plan, all your AFAM gas plants, Egbim, Ebocha, Utorogu gas plants will come online free, right? The Shiroro Dam, like I said, okay, that one is seasonal. You can call that one a slightly old technology. But how will you be having this volume of gas and you are not like Qatar?
But the last time I heard, it was the neighbor almost sounded like a broken record when he kept on saying vandalism is the problem. Vandalism is the problem.
Vandalism is a criminality, right? No matter how poor a country is, no matter how poor people are deprived, that will not be a justification for economic vandalism.
Let me go to Honorable before I go on a short break. You were going to chip in something.
Yeah, you see, we talk about all these things. I read somewhere where we were even informed that we do not even have capable hands in those, that the last time they even employed engineers was in the early 90s. That now they have, when you have even this facility, there are people that should be trained to manage those facilities. And when you don't have that kind of capacity, and we have a lot of graduates walking the streets of Nigeria that could not get a job, but they have that opportunity of being engaged. We have a lot of engineers around here that are capable. They go out there and they excel in other countries. You understand? When they get to other climes, you have them as a best this, best that, and best this. We have them in this country. They were trained from this country, and they can also add value to what we are talking about. But how many of them have been engaged? When you don't bring in new people, we are talking about renewable energy. We have the wind energy, we have the waste to energy.
Even solar.
Even solar.
We are so blessed with
we
sun.
are so blessed. In Lagos alone, we generate over 10,000 metric tons per day of waste.
Yeah, waste.
So
but if you still don't employ the capable Nigerian graduates, and you said you are going to the renewable energy, you will suffer the same fate.
Let me, I beg your pardon, because we need to go on a short break. When we'll come back, we'll definitely continue where we stopped. Do stay with us, please.